Now, on to our next speaker. Professor Les Lancaster is Professor Emeritus of Transpersonal Psychology at Liverpool John Moores and an Honorary Research Fellow in the Centre for Jewish Studies at Manchester University. He's a past Chair of Transpersonal Psychology for the British Psychological Association and is currently President of the International Transpersonal Association. His research interests focus on the cognitive neuroscience of consciousness and the psychology of mysticism, the latter centering on Kabbalistic psychology. His initial research training was in neuroscience and psychology, and subsequently he explored the hermeneutic methods employed in the rabbinic and mystical traditions in Judaism, seeking ways to integrate these approaches. Over his career, Les has taught key aspects of research into consciousness and transpersonal psychology to a wide audience. He is committed to the value of transpersonal perspectives in a range of professional areas, including coaching, therapy, and management, and is presently Academic Dean for Transpersonal Studies at the Professional Development Foundation. He's the Director of online postgraduate programs in consciousness, spirituality, and transpersonal psychology for the Aleph Trust. In addition to many journal articles, Les's published works include Mind, Brain and Human Potential, which was the winner of a Science and Medical Network Best Book Award, Approaches to Consciousness, the Marriage of Science and Mysticism, and The Essence of Kabbalah. Please welcome Professor Lancaster.
Thank you, Matt. Following that introduction, you're probably expecting some very erudite academic words. Wow! That's my word about this event. What a wonderful event. And I'm really very grateful to the people at the Flame, Bushi, Sonia, Dav, for the work they're doing. And it's very special for me to be here and listening to the case histories. It's humbling to see what amazing work is being done. You know, standing in this place, a testament to the Christian religion, makes me think about that phrase about knowing by their fruits. It's clear that the fruits of what is being done at the Flame are very profound. So well done to those involved. May the Flame bring more light. There's one question that drives what I want to say this evening. The question is, how deep can we go? Let me explain. The topic is about spiritual intelligence. Well, at the core of this spiritual intelligence are two fundamental ideas: wisdom and compassion. There's been a lot of research into spiritual intelligence, and there are other qualities that have been identified, the sense of meaning, sense of connectedness, sense of humanity. All these are involved. But I want to talk about wisdom. You know, wisdom, in fact, it was mentioned by Francesca. I remember what you said when you were speaking, your own case. Wisdom is found deep in the psyche, in the soul. And wisdom is something that our society seems to have a problem with. We live in a time of sound bites, textees, and people who will tell you what they think you want to hear. Politicians especially. Where's integrity? Where's the wisdom? So what do I have to offer? Well, through studying the brain, through studying psychological science, but especially through my interest in mysticism, I think that our culture is moving forward. We are starting to regain, to recapture some of those deep ideas. And it's really thanks to organizations like The Flame that this is moving forward. So I started with a question. I'm going to reformulate it. How deep can you go? It's about each one of us. Everyone who's sitting here surely is here because there is some kind of quest. And it's about change, about transformation. So wisdom is the core of that quest, maybe the goal of that quest. We're also here to talk about mindfulness. So much change has been wrought over maybe 30 years. I'm not going to stand here and reel off the research into the brain, into the way in which the brain changes. We heard about gene expression. There are many lines of research that are teaching us the value of meditation. And it enters into so many walks of life. But I want to stand back from that for a moment. I want to read to you from a scholar of Buddhism, early Buddhism, Professor Samuel. He writes, talking about mindfulness and how it's used in a kind of therapeutic way. He says, this use of Buddhist-derived practice as therapy, as a way of adjustment to life in the everyday world of samsara, is in direct contradiction to the orientation of the Pali Canon and of the Nikaya period of early Buddhism, from which these practices are often claimed to derive. The Buddhism of this period emphasized withdrawal from the everyday world of samsara, not adjustment to it. Now that's a deep statement and it requires some unpacking, more time than I have here. But let's focus on this word samsara. And many of you will have come across this as referring to the kind of veil of illusion that masks our perception of what is truly real. One inspired Buddhist teacher put it this way: samsara is a process, the tendency to keep creating worlds and then moving into them. And note that this creating and moving in doesn't just happen once at birth. We're doing it all the time. And that's where I can bring the psychology, the cognitive science, the neuroscience. Samsara traditionally is referring to the wheel of birth and death. Psychology can say little about that. What do we know of such large-scale processes? Well, what we do know about is the way in which the cognitive system, the brain, creates the worlds in which we inhabit. The brain is an organ that establishes expectations, and we move into those expectations. At the center of those expectations is, of course, our sense of self. The I narrative, as I write about it in my books. We tell ourselves a story. And again, that came out through the case histories, case studies. We tell ourselves stories, and we inhabit those stories, and we like to be the main character. Wisdom is about penetrating to the core, to the root of that world-creating process. First, we need to realize that process, to understand that we are creating the stories. Because, of course, it's the stories that bring us suffering. First, we need to see them for what they are, and then we need to gain mastery. A tradition like Buddhism brings deep insight into the nature of those processes. And of course, mindfulness practice is all about unraveling those processes, seeing it for what it is. The more Western traditions, Abrahamic traditions, Judaism, Christianity, at their esoteric or mystical levels, they look to penetrate the mystery of creation. And it's in the mystery of creation that these traditions find the essence of wisdom. In Hebrew, the word for wisdom, chachma, it's a feminine word. In Greek, Sophia, a feminine word. At the core of these esoteric traditions is the idea that the spark behind creation, the initiating impulse, is partnered by the feminine impulse. This balance of male and female, where wisdom is the female partner, that balance is at the core of the psyche, each one of us. We all inhabit that balance. We work with that balance. The stories of creation tell of the Creator God. The mysticism within these traditions try to unpack what lies at the initiation of creation. And why do they do that? Because creation, for these esoteric and mystical traditions, which are actually highly psychological, creation for these traditions is not something that happened once upon a time, as we might read it in some scriptural text. Creation is here and now, every moment. And the path to transformation, the ladder of ascent through which we aspire to wisdom, that ladder of ascent is always present. And it is the reverse of the process as the mystics understood creation. So at the core, it's the root of the psyche. Someone referred, one of the case studies, you referred to synchronicity. There's another erudite term. But I know that at the core of the flame is a model of our reality. There is no separation, mind, matter, soul, body. At some point it is all unified. And it is wisdom that lies at the core of that unification. You know, in some ancient works, the Kabbalists, Jewish mystics, wrote of the spark of darkness that is at the beginning of creation. The Sufis talk about the black light. Christianity has the dark night of the soul. Alchemy shares these ideas. What are these strange ideas? Well, the great psychologist Carl Jung, he understood it, because he wrote about the enormous paradox we find that the way towards enlightenment leads through darkness. This is what we mean by the unconscious. Light is an image always used of the mind in the mystical traditions, in poetical traditions. So the Kabbalists talk about the spark of darkness, the black light, and they also talk about the line of measure. It's very hard to convey some of these ideas. They write about this line of measure, the ability to measure that itself has no measure. The measure that has no measure. Within the concealed of the concealed. Strange language. Difficult to translate. Difficult to understand. But these two are the essence of mind and matter. For light is the light of mind, even though at the core it is what we call unconscious. Depends from which side you're looking at it. And the measure that has no measure is the essence of matter, because matter is what can be measured. And so these profound mystics were pointing to what lies at the core. Just like Carl Jung, one of the greatest challenges towards the end of his life came through his dialogue with the Nobel-winning physicist Wolfgang Pauli. Physics and psychology, the study of matter, the study of the mind. But they come together. Ultimately, these are one. The mystics were delving into that oneness. Science is delving into that oneness. Quantum mechanics shows us how consciousness, observation, is at the core of what unfolds as matter. And my own area, the matter of the brain. You know, many neuroscientists spend a long time trying to find how the brain creates consciousness. It doesn't. And that is increasingly realized. Consciousness comes first. It manifests. The brain is the organ of consciousness, but spirit is primary. Wisdom is of the heart, it's of the mind, it's of the soul, and it's of the body. And the more we cultivate wisdom through practices of meditation and more complex mystical practices that have been passed on through the ages, the more we engage with these practices, the more we can bring more light to our world. The light that the flame is bringing, centering in Coventry, maybe, city of culture. Sitting here with you, I think it should be the city of culture. I want to thank those who invited me, and how much I've enjoyed being part of this event, a very special event. Thank you.